5 key principles for meditating on anxiety. This is a multi-graded path where one principle leads into the next. Each of the principles infuses and supports the next, making it stronger. So the first principle I want to discuss is meditate properly. The next is choose an appropriate object. The third is Tathagata Garbha, or the Buddha nature. The fourth is called virtuous socialization. And the fifth is simple, never give up. So if we want to overcome anxiety through meditation, first things first, we need to meditate properly. Proper meditation means that you learn the fundamental idea of what meditation actually is. Unfortunately, these days we've been given a sort of distorted idea about meditation based on Westerners taking these kind of groovy and cool aspects of it and then distorting that even further. They've stripped out the fundamentals, which are honestly kind of boring, especially when you talk about them. And they've only left us with the cool things. But without the fundamentals, you're not really doing it. So the fundamental aspect of meditation is the ability to concentrate upon an object of meditation. So the self is the subject, I am the subject, you're the subject. And then if we focus on our breathing or on a visualization, that is the object. Object is what the mind perceives, an object of consciousness. So it's not a physical object necessarily. It can be, but it can also be a visualized object, something in our mind. It can be a mantra that we repeat. It can be the breathing. Whatever the object is, once the mind stabilizes that concentration and becomes steady, meaning the mind does not forget the object, that is considered meditation. The mind is stably on the object without wandering. Before then, it's only learning to meditate. This is very important because most people are trying to leap over this. They don't understand it. They just want to get to the part of really doing meditation. And they don't want to go through the difficult part of learning. It's like trying to do backflips on a trick bicycle without learning how to just work the pedals without falling over. So I'm including a link in the description to a quite detailed step-by-step instruction for learning the basics of meditation. This is called the 9 Stages of Resting the Mind, and it dates back to the Buddha, and I think it will be very helpful. If you do it diligently, you can stabilize the mind on the object. That's quite possible. Next is to choose an appropriate object of meditation. Now, if you want to overcome anxiety, then you need to choose an object that will help with that. You don't want to just meditate on a stick or a random object, a sphere, a crystal sphere or something like that. Although you could put the meaning in that to make it work. But we specifically want to figure out what the best object of meditation is in order to work with anxiety and overcome it. Now, I would say that the best object of meditation for anxiety, for working with anxiety, is to not meditate on anxiety itself. There's a specific reason for that. It's because it won't be helpful. When we meditate on anxiety, we tend to reify it or strengthen it or make it more powerful. In a sense, you can meditate on the anxiety itself and see through the solidity of it, see the basic underlying energy. But then you're not really meditating on anxiety because anxiety is merely a concept. You're getting beneath it to the actual action that's going on in the body. But the better system, especially for our level of meditation, is to meditate on something different and regard any anxiety that comes up as a sort of distraction or just a nuisance that arises in meditation. Or just see it as it is, sort of some energy that's going on in the mind, and perhaps even use it if we can, but not to make a project out of that. But don't meditate directly on anxiety. That's not the object of the meditation. Instead, meditate on a much better approach, which is to meditate on innate confidence. This brings us to Tathagata Garbha, which is the third aspect. The view or the understanding, the idea the philosophy, if you will, of what is actually going on in our minds, in our beings, in our bodies. This is not the explanation of how to meditate. This is the idea of how to relate to your mind and how to relate to reality so that the meditation for anxiety will provide a benefit. If you meditate without the view, you will just wander around aimlessly. You won't find yourself in a beneficial place. But if you meditate with the view, it will help you to emerge out of that darkness of anxiety and into the light. So the view is that you have basic confidence. You, in and of yourself, within you right now, have this confidence within you. And it's merely covered over by anxiety. Just underneath that anxiety is this level of confidence. But it's even deeper than that. It's more profound. This is an abiding reality because it's your own basic goodness. That's what Tathagata Garbha means. It's translated as Buddha nature in Buddhism. But it can also be the idea of basic goodness. That's another way of looking at what is the same thing. So this third principle is taking what we've developed so far, an ability to meditate and an appropriate object of meditation, and providing a conceptual understanding for it so that we know where we're headed. So we'll infuse it with a good methodology of working with it. So making a relationship with that Buddha nature or basic goodness and realizing that that's your deepest essence and that it contains a lot of goodness, a lot of actually virtue. That virtue can be used in good ways, which brings us to the fourth point. Virtuous socialization. I'm not sold on that phrase, but there's something about it that I really like because it gets at a certain meaning that I think is very helpful. Virtuous socialization means to extend what you've developed so far, the Buddha nature, the ability to meditate and focus, and a good object of meditation, and put that out in your life, to bring it into your daily life, off the cushion. Up to now, it's been on the cushion. At this point, we're taking it off the cushion, we're taking it into our life. So we're actually going to get somewhere with it. It's not just going to be an exercise, it's going to be reality. So as you meditate on the basic goodness and the confidence that's innate, you realize that you have a lot of virtue. This virtue is not a moral virtue, like knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's more in the sense of just fundamental compassion or goodness or integrity or love or wisdom. It just arises. It doesn't question what the bad thing would be that's the opposite. It's just when you see something that's so painful and heartbreaking and you're overwhelmed by it, that's your innate virtue. That's your basic goodness kind of just forcing itself to the surface. And the basic goodness has an infinite amount of virtues embedded in it. They're who you basically are. And that all that's just covered over by our neurosis. And if we have a serious problem with anxiety, there's a phrase, work with the greatest defilements first. It's part of the mind training slogans. So if we have serious anxiety, then we could say anxiety is our greatest defilement. It's our greatest problem. And that's what we're working on. At that point, when we're doing the virtuous socialization, when we're bringing our virtues up, it is called post-meditation or meditation in action. After our formal meditation period, we decide this is the trait I want to work with today. We take it into our daily life and remind ourselves of it throughout the day. You can do what you call a flash meditation. So in that state, we know what we're meditating on. We're meditating on our innate confidence. So we visualize ourselves as innately confident, just manifesting that brilliantly. Maybe even use a light to help. And you just see it as so. You know that it is true because it is true. So having established the view of innate virtues in the third part, we see ourselves as completely, fully confident, as very compassionate, as very wise. We actually experience our own being in that way. And that's easy to do because it's real. That's actually what's going on at your deepest level. And that gives us to the next principle. We're going to get discouraged. So we have to make a commitment to never give up. It's not to give up or give in to discouragement. So this path is a slow burn. It's steady progress. but it's definite progress. If you listen to a lot of online teachings, guided meditations, they'll make you feel better, but the effect doesn't last. This one internalizes the effect, so you don't need to go to a guided meditation anymore. You just create the meditation on your own. But because of that, the results feel a little slower. It doesn't provide an immediate relief. It's not like popcorn or Chinese food. It's a sustained relief. It's permanent. Once you develop it, it remains. So because that's slow and steady, we can get discouraged. We can feel like nothing's happening. But it definitely is. It works. It worked for me. And it can work for you, but it requires commitment and effort. In fact, that commitment, that initial saying you're going to do it. You could say it's like a vow. You could even make a little vow that you're going to do it. That effort, that commitment to it is a huge part because it means we're taking responsibility for our own mind. And that is a stance of genuine confidence. Just by saying, I am going to do this, you will develop a certain amount of confidence by internalizing the responsibility. Instead of looking to someone else to save you, you've decided you're going to save yourself. That will solve a big chunk of the overwhelmingness, the helplessness of the anxiety. And from there, you'll have a lot more confidence to work with it. So, if you're interested in this program, I've got a much more detailed course, which includes 75 lessons. The beginner course is free, and it's in the link below. Hopefully, I'll see you there, or maybe this is enough for you, and that's great. I hope that works for you. In any event, I wish you goodness, happiness, and supreme confidence.